Welcome back to KSP Interstellar Quests, a mission to reach the promised worlds. The last episode, Jeb landed our shuttle quite harshly, and today the aeronautics team is going to see if they can improve upon the design. Yeah, we kick off at something different and quite a different place as well. Yeah, we are at the island runway. So after having discovered it, we decided to upgrade it and turn it into a base camp for our aeronautics department. And you can see two new planes actually. Well, one is a familiar plane. So you're looking at a St. Christopher's heavy cargo plane, being piloted by Valentina, Scott, Kerbin and Patney, the scientists. And on top of that, we see a next iteration shuttle that we've been using up so far. And this one has some new interesting features that hopefully prevent last time's accident. It is being piloted by... I don't remember who piloted it. I think it's Jeb again. It's separating and the Septrons are, well, exploding. That's totally normal. And you can see some changes we made to the design. We've moved the wings slightly. It's called a dihedral design, which should increase stability. We've added two small engines for atmospheric cross-range capability. But most of all, we added canards. So one of the things that I discovered is that the center of lift is quite far back, which is a problem with delta wings. Which makes them very difficult to control. We've also added air brakes because slowing down using S-turns is possible, but maybe I'm just not good enough a pilot. So here is Jeb on final approach back to the island runway after having liftoff at approximately 6 or 7 kilometers altitude from the main carrier plane, and he's fine-tuning his ascent. He does not want to wreck another shuttle. This is the third shuttle in the range. This one is called Latitude. I thought that was a suiting name, since it should have more attitude control and also a bit of an attitude. And Jeb bounces the shuttle off the runway, but manages to bounce on the wheels, which can take quite a beating. Almost tips it over, but yeah, we'll call this a success compared to the last landing. Meanwhile, we have the St. Christopher, who has recovered its dive, because it has to dive quite steep, because it has more lift than the shuttle actually. So what I did is I added a small Septron on top of it. So the moment I stage, I forced the nose down to avoid the plane jumping up, because it lost the mass of the shuttle, but still has all this lift from the huge wings. And the shuttle dropping down and actually crashing into the plane. But I thought, since we have this big beautiful plane full of fuel, I decided to take her on a tour. And I've not circumnavigated Kerbin before, and that's actually something that we won't be able to complete today, but we'll come close. We'll come about halfway there. So this plane has two large Weasley engines which provide a lot of thrust, and it means that it can fly roughly at an altitude of 10 kilometers. I think it can get all the way up to 10 kilometers. And I also played a little bit around with better time warp, which allows me to change the time warp to faster speeds than 4 times physical time acceleration, which made it bearable to fly long distances. But our first stop from the island is back to the KSC. We're using this as a navigation marker and to look at the Kerbal Space Center from the sky, and maybe take some aerial photography and some study, buzz the tower, whatever it is that Valentina and Scott want to do. Scott Kerbin is of course modeled after Scott Manley. Yeah. The series that we paid tribute to. I also learned from a recent video from Low Aerospace. I forgot his name, but you look him up on YouTube. He's a cool guy. He's a really cool guy. So go check them out. That there is a lot of unmarked locations on the map, or a lot. There's a couple of unmarked locations on the map that actually have launch sites, which we can use, which is exactly what we're going to do today. So we are heading to the next of our sites, which is called the Cove launch site. It's hidden here in this small cove down there. It's the only water-based site, a site that we can use to launch craft, not just from the water, but also like things like boats or submarines and stuff like that. I might convert it into a very large launch site somewhere offshore or in the water, or build some other kind of inlet there, because I can foresee that we have to build a huge rockets, which would need a very large deluge system, and actually having the water right there would make total sense. Now I'm cutting out a lot of the footage today because this took a long time, but it's a breeze to fly this plane. And if you have the mod atmospheric autopilot installed, you can basically give it a couple of commands and make it fly itself. However, when you come up on your waypoints, you obviously have to do some of the manual piloting. You discover some stuff and get not only the science but also the satisfaction of having discovered all these new places in Kerbin. We are currently on our way to the next spot, which was added in by the Kerbin side remastered mod. Well, remastered is kind of a maybe not a correct name, because it's not really a remastering. It's like a complete rebuild of the original Kerbin side. Kerbin side was very bugged, but functional. And it added a lot of nice cool places into the game. So I'm happy that somebody remastered it. I'm sorry, I don't remember who actually made it, but you can find it on the forums. And Cape Kerbin is a pretty cool launch site with a runway, taxiways, lots of airplane hangars, nearby lake. So maybe this is something that we want to fly to in the future or depart from in the future. I haven't really made up my mind yet where all the light sites are going to be. Yeah, we have our resident scientist Patney Kerbin, who's going on a stroll in the insane plane and trying to figure out what everything is that we can do over here. We are en route northbound. We're heading to the Arctic Circle. We're gonna fly over the poles. This is something we've not done, especially not in this game, but it will give you beautiful sights, and you know you're over the poles when the chase mode of your aircraft starts rotating around, because it tries to maintain that same angle with respect to the north, so you get this nice panning effect. Also, we're doing 280 knots, which is close to breaking the sound barrier, but not enough. In a steep dive we can make it, but that's not something we're gonna try today. Once over the poles, we'll cross over to the Glacier launch site, which is marked for Arctic research, and it has a runway directly connected to a not sure, an ice cliff or ice, well, a bunch of ice that you can land on. Ice is very flat, fortunately, and the Parallax hasn't added too many boulders to it, so we should be okay even if we skip over the runway. In the post-processing, I added in this night vision kind of view because it was very dark by the time we got here. We still had a lot of fuel left. We had something like 4,000 meters left. We probably could have made it to another launch site, but it was night, it was dark. I think our crew needs some rest, and overshoots the runway, dips off the ice shelf, but then brakes on the second part by reversing engine thrust. Yeah, I probably should have tied that to a hotkey. And then taxis all the way back to the airport. And here we are entering the runway. Of course we try to follow the taxiway. We'll probably get fined for cutting off some corners here. And Valentina is trying to park the plane into the central parking area, presuming that the light posts do not have colliders. But they do. Yeah, so we'll stick around here for sunrise, and then we'll use the power of Hyperedit to fill our tanks. and get ready for the next trip on a fresh day. This is nice. We can see the surroundings, we can see the ice, and we taxi up to the runway, and we'll then fly off southbound. And we have another couple of places that we want to go to. In the upper left corner you can see atmospheric autopilot, which currently we're only using for fly-by-wire, like stability control, but you can also set courses and altitudes. Here we are, crossing through a snowstorm above the cloud layers. Yeah, the view is beautiful today. Had we added an antenna, we could have brought tons of science home in the form of crew reports, maybe surface samples from the polar regions. But yeah, I forgot to bring that, so we're fairly limited on what we're bringing back. Up north also is the Balkanur launch site, which is not completely correct if you would look at it geographically. It's more like the Plesetsk area, but nevertheless we discovered it. And we are making our way to the Desert Airport, which in my memory was quite a fancy airport. But in the 1.12.5 version of the game, this has been degraded to like a level 1 runway, a couple of buildings here and there, and a very small launch pad. So I'm going to use Kerbal constructs to fix that. And the reasoning is being we're bringing the team here. They're going to figure out what this airfield is and what we can do with it. And what we're going to do is add a giant runway. So Kerbal Constructs allows you to build additional runways. And we're going to add something like a 4 to 5... Oh, almost lost my tails here. Like a 4 to 5 kilometer runway. We'll need it in the future, but you'll see in a moment why. Meanwhile, the boys at the aeronautics team, or the girls at the aeronautics team, the Kerbals at the aeronautics team are testing out their new space design. This is called the Phoenix. And the reasoning behind it is that we love our Hermes or Callisto shuttle that we have designed. But it's basically one big hunk of steel that we try to bring back. And the rocket is reasonably expensive. So we want to make our way towards a more SSTO design, which starts with a more capable aircraft. And that is what the Phoenix is all about. We also discovered another island. And here you can see me frantically trying to bleed off speed. I should have bought air brakes for this one. We are aligning for the runway, plopping down the gear, and getting ready for touchdown in our new craft. And here we go. And this is where I find that I've set the spring strain on the wheels to strong. So we crash and we try again, and we try again. And we try again. Yeah, so whenever I hit a runway, the rear wheels kick me up. And that's because I've put the spring strain too tough. And because there's two of them on the back, they tend to throw up the plane. I'm probably going to need something like air brakes and something else. At some point I just gave up. And I have to confess that I cheated on this one. I've done at least a dozen landings before doing that. But I fixed it in the SPH for the next version of the plane, which is the Phoenix B1. And it is a shuttle kind of design. And why is it a shuttle design and not a simple Vulcan rocket? Well, the Vulcan rocket is about 50,000 funds. This is roughly 20,000 funds. So it's less than half of what we would spend on the Vulcan, and I do love building shuttles. Yeah, so we flit around, drop the boosters. The boosters will drop almost on top of the island, so I'm pretty sure we can refurbish them. We are in space, and when doing the insertion burn, I'd slow down the top two booster engines on my booster. And I'm actually trying to get rid of debris by burning retrograde and letting the booster fly off. And as tradition dictates, we are launching a ScanSat satellite on our first mission. And this is where I discovered that I forgot to pack monopropellant. So a bit of wiggling and playing with the satellites to get it into orbit, and we'll ship it off to Minmus in a moment. But yeah, it will take a couple of days before Minmus is in proper alignment. So we are returning the Phoenix home. The drag properties are completely different than from the Callisto shuttle, meaning that this fine maneuver will make us 200 kilometers short of the runway, which is not a problem because I've got a ton of fuel left, which I want to get rid of. So I'm using this area in high altitude to get us closer to the airport. And in a moment you will see what we made from desert airfields. So yeah, I went all out with Kerbal constructs, and here is our 5-kilometer runway, which we are approaching as soon as we clear the clouds. We've got a couple of other runways there for civilian purposes, or maybe military purposes, I don't know, but like non-space related ideas. And we got this giant runway in the middle that we can use. We got now flaps installed, which will slow us down. We'll look into that in the next episode. Let's finish this landing and then start focusing back on the Mun. See you then.